get in touch and let me know. 85058. Or if you're on social media, you can use the hashtag #WakeUpToMoney. Now, the UK is to host the first global summit on artificial intelligence safety this autumn, bringing together key countries, companies and researchers to agree how to mitigate risks from the tech. Now, the conference was announced as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and US President Joe Biden meet in Washington. It follows warnings from experts, including the heads of OpenAI and Google DeepMind, that unregulated AI could pose, and they don't pull their punches, existential threats to humanity. Well, Alexandra Moussavidzadeh is the CEO of Evident, a research firm specializing in measuring companies' adoption of AI. Also, the producer of the Global AI Index, which ranks nations on their capacity for AI, measuring investment, innovation and implementation. Alexandra, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. How significant is this for the industry?
The question of regulation is incredibly significant. It's been a question that has been left on the debate table for a while. But with the incoming signatures of two letters, one to pause AI research and one to warn about the existential risks of AI, the acceleration in the debate around how to best regulate AI has certainly come to the forefront. And Biden has been talking to various experts. The EU has already put forward an AI Act that has been amended to include considerations around generative AI. Rishi Sunak has also stepped forward with some thoughts on what AI regulation might look like.
The UK then is trying to position itself as a lead. How are we doing at the moment? What's our position in the sector generally?
Well, as you mentioned, the Global AI Index looks at the strength of national AI ecosystems, and US and China certainly lead in this race, and the UK comes in the third position on AI sort of abilities and capabilities in terms of development and deployment of AI. On a close fourth comes Canada, and then countries following that are Singapore, but also European countries such as Germany and France. We also see Israel and the Netherlands as strong nations in terms of their abilities to develop and deploy AI. But it's been in a fragile position for a couple of years because other nations have been more forceful in terms of funding AI development, considering aspects such as the strength of the infrastructure and compute power, R&D, and so on. And I guess with the number of dynamics that are going on right now with other nations doubling down on AI capabilities, and the merger of DeepMind and Google Brain, which has slightly shifted the focus of DeepMind to the US, there's some questions around where the UK will be standing in terms of its AI capabilities going forward.
Can you give an example of how another country might have begun regulating this incredibly fast-moving sector?
Well, there are countries that have banned, for example, the use of generative AI, such as Italy, and countries that have been considering the use of generative AI, which is a specific area of AI. But there are also areas and states in the United States that have made some decisions at a state level. California is one that have looked at being a bit more robust in terms of its thinking around the beginnings of the regulation on AI. But there's no nation that has put forward yet an actual blueprint of how one would create the guardrails around AI going forward. It's still very much up in the air, and various structures and proposals have been put forward, both by the US and the EU, but also been floated some ideas from Rishi Sunak on how this could look. For example, the construct that the IAEA or CERN, for example, as ways in which and platforms in which we can look at for inspiration for putting guardrails around AI going forward.
Is there a risk that the countries that do start putting guardrails around it, imposing rules on AI within their countries, will end up being the countries that get left behind, because the companies that want to develop in a regulation-free zone will move into other countries.
Well, there is a tension between the balance of putting safeguards and guardrails around AI and those who are wanting to leave the sector open and not stifle innovation. And that tension is certainly there. And you can see it in the way that Biden and the US is thinking around this, that are taking a bit more of a light touch when it comes to proposing the contours of what AI regulation could look like, trying to create that balance between innovation and safety. And the EU has certainly come down with a bit more of a robust and forceful proposal in its AI Act. And as far as I can tell, the UK is trying to come down on a sort of a third way in terms of meeting that middle ground of a more laissez-faire US approach, balanced between a more hardline EU approach. But it's correct that, you can have regulation in one country and none in another. And you can see that there would be a situation where some of the development would shift to countries that have less hardline regulations, for sure, absolutely.
A really interesting text has just come in from somebody who hasn't given their name, saying the existential threat of AI could come from the environmental impact of its data processing needs, and yet no one, it seems, is talking about that.
Is it a topic that gets discussed, but sort of more on the fringes? There's absolutely a case to be put forward on simply the development and use of AI and how much that is putting pressure on the climate. The vast compute power needed, and that will accelerate going forward, is definitely one of the sort of environmental concerns that people who are following that are sounding the alarm bells on as one of the aspects of AI going forward as a risk. Whereas the godfathers of AI that are calling for the considerations and concerns and also sounding the alarm bells are more around what AI potentially could do in terms of existential risk of human kind going forward. And some are talking about AGI being on the horizon that could, wipe out human
AGI.
existence as we know it. AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is the concept that AI would get so powerful going forward that it would be able to surpass human intelligence on all aspects. But that would, yes.
That's the point at which we reach the "I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that" kind of level of AI, I suppose. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we're talking about fantastical future possibilities, and on the other hand, there's a lot of businesses still trying to understand how it might factor into their day-to-day bread and butter. I want to bring in Henry Engelhardt, founder and former chief exec at the Admiral Group. Henry, insurance feels like an area where AI could really provide quite a lot of important support.
Yeah, I think anything that gives insurers more information and allows them to be more precise in their rating is going to have a big effect.
Henry, would it mean a loss of jobs? Because we talk a lot about, what it might mean existentially, but what about for people's just professional lives at the moment? Are we going to see a massive shift in the next few years?
Wow, that's beyond me at the moment. I mean, this is things like AI and quantum computing and things like this. If you go back to, say, the 1980s, pre-internet, how could you possibly imagine the world we have today? Because you didn't even know about, there was no internet, there was no thought about it. And that's what, 30 some odd years? And so if we're taking this in its infancy, so we're in a sense, this was the beginning of internet. What is the world going to be like in 30 years as these technologies grow and mature? And I can't quite picture it. I don't know.
Alexandra, where are you seeing the biggest investments being made in this sector? What are the priorities driving AI at the moment?
Well, in terms of business, I mean, businesses are making vast investments into AI. And you were talking about insurance before. The banking sector has for many years made big investment.